Okay. How's everybody doing? Woohoo! You guys have some really fantastic energy. You guys must have had a lot of fun yesterday. Yeah? Yeah. Thanks. Thanks. Feeling the love. So my name is Erin Weed. Most people just call me Weed because it's awesome. End of explanation. And this has been kind of an interesting morning. And it started at about 3:45 in the morning. I know. Yikes, right? And I wake up to the sound of my dog barking. And I'm like, seriously? Really? Like, I have to get up early. I have to give this speech to these amazing people. Why is this happening to me? Because I have a hard time falling asleep after I get up like that. So I go figure out what's going on. She is standing on the last possible stair before coming up all the stairs because she doesn't realize that the baby gate is definitely open enough for her to get through. She's a 13-year-old pug. She can't see very well. She was like all discombobulated, like out of dream state. And she's sitting on this last possible stair before getting to where she wanted to go because she wanted to come into my bedroom and go into her bed. And I remember just being so annoyed in that moment because I'm like, why can't you get up the last freaking stair, you know? But I realized in that moment that this stair actually represents a lot of what I do in life. And that is really our truth. Going the distance to actually get to where you need to be to authentically communicate. And in Zoe's case, that's my dog's name, she was so close, but she couldn't quite see it. She didn't know the gate was open to get where she wanted to go. And that's how so many of my clients come to me, is that they're so close to living their truth and they're so scared of speaking it because there feels like there's so much resistance in it. And I feel like part of my job for you today is really to be the gatekeeper, to help you understand that this isn't about really your stories. You are more than your story. This is about your truth. That's how we connect with people. And there's a lot of stuff going around the internet now, all these articles being written about your story and how important it is to tell it, and I agree with that. But we've got to go the extra mile. We've got to tell our truth as well. So today's session is going to be all about using our stories as a foundation, but really getting to the place where we're actually speaking our truth. Now the morning got weirder, so check this out. So I don't really go to sleep. Oh, you want to know why I didn't really go to sleep? Because I'm laying there, and every time I am about to give a speech, I always think about you all as individuals. Even though I hadn't met any of you yet, I was thinking about you guys. I'm thinking, okay, when I was 22 and I started my first socially driven enterprise, it was a scary time. I was having to leave a job. There was financial constraints. There was that fear of, who am I to do this? Can I do this? Am I too young? There was so much of that stuff. And I was just laying there in bed thinking about you guys and feeling such gratitude for you all making the trip, making the financial sacrifice, making the time to be here. And so I just laid there for hours thinking about what is the gift that I can give you? Because really that is what speaking your truth is all about. It's a gift to make other people better. Now it's funny that I was laying in bed thinking about gifts because then my morning got weirder. Well, then my 5-year-old son comes into my room and he delivers this to me, which is like a Unabomber package. And I'm like, what is in there? Like, you just never know. And so, I mean, he's like really into like things that crawl and, you know, stuff like that. And I'm laying in bed. And it was so interesting because what I was thinking as I was laying in bed and thinking about what we're going to talk about today and just really thinking about propelling you all to start telling your truth and use your stories as a foundation for that. So I was thinking about all these great analogies. And then sure enough, what he's done is he's been drawing rocket ships. And I thought that that was just so interesting. And funnily enough, there's two. There's rocket ships for you, there's rocket ships for me. Because really, anytime we're standing up here and we're telling our truth, whether it's me teaching you how to do it or you teaching someone else, we're all getting better. We're all getting more authentic. And I believe that that really pushes society forward. So anyway, my little Udemy son, thought I had to include him. He was so proud I was taking this to work, by the way. He's like, you're going to tell people about my box? Oh yeah, I'm going to tell them. It's going to be awesome. So before we really get into stories, I think we first need to start with the power of words. And the power of words is pretty important. Now, words are the things that are the foundation of the stories. And if we choose the wrong words, then we're not going to really convey what we need to in the story. Now, I personally have always been a little obsessed with words. When I was little, I was probably about 7, and I went through this phase where I was really into running away. Did anyone ever go through this? Or am I just total? I had like a good childhood. I lived in suburban Chicago. There was nothing wrong, yet every week someone had wronged me in a major way, and I was going to pack my Jordache duffel bag and stuff my caboodle in there, and I was hightailing it out of there. And so I would write these cryptic messages and announcing my time of departure, hoping that no one would ever figure out where I was going, how I was going to get there. And what I found was that in the sheer drama of writing these words, half the time, by the time I was done with my awesome note, the whole feeling had dissipated. I had moved energy in that moment, and as I'm shoving my caboodle in my duffel bag, I'm just like losing my steam, So, and then I've made a commitment. I've told everybody that I'm leaving, so you gotta follow through. So I walk a block and then stop, and like the whole thing had shifted in that moment by simply speaking my truth in a letter and then walking away. And I would just look back at home and look down at my duffel bag, and I would just be like, this is lame. Some of the neighborhood kids actually ended up finding these kinds of notes, and they also reaffirmed that I was lame. But really, that is the power of words. That is the power of speaking your truth. So that's really what I did when I was a little kid. Well, then, in middle school, I went through a pretty exceptionally awkward period. Can anyone relate to that? You're all like, no, I was ravishingly good looking, and I had my shit together in junior high. Okay. I am not part of that club. And so it was the year 1990. I'm sure most of you can remember that. And this new sensation was coming onto the scene called rap. Now, I lived in suburban Chicago, and I had no business whatsoever rapping. But for some reason, I got really into it. I was really inspired by Salt and Peppa and Kid and Play, And so it started off with poetry, but then, I kicked it up a few notches, and I got some rhythm, And so I started rapping, and it was just like this fun little pastime I had. Well, this one day, I decide I'm going to join student council. And so I go to this meeting, and the Valentine's Day dance is coming up. I'm in 7th grade. I'm like trying to make a name for myself in the school. And so I'm listening to all of their marketing challenges. They're just like, oh my gosh, we have this great dance plan, but nobody's buying tickets. For some reason, everybody's decided that the Valentine's Day dance this year is totally stupid. And have you ever been sitting in a meeting and brilliance strikes? And instead of just blurting out the idea, you want it to be awesome. So you like wait for the right moment. And you wait for it, and you wait for it, and then all of a sudden there's a lull. Everyone was feeling hopeless and helpless, and this dance is going to bomb, and then I stand up. And by the way, this is what I look like. Not in that moment, but this is just kind of like how I rolled in general. That's a Statue of Liberty hat, by the way, and a sweatshirt. I don't know, I was always making a statement. So this was no exception. I stand up in all of my awkward glory, and I tell them, good people of Robert Frost Junior High School, student council, I have the idea that will be the savior of this Valentine's Day dance. Are you ready to hear it? And they're all like, okay, Shakespeare. Like, what is going on? And I was like, this Friday morn, I will do a rap on the school intercom, and everyone will want to come to this dance. And they all look at me, not even uttering anything, just going, no. And I'm thinking to myself, like, you guys don't even understand. So I was like, can I do it seriously? And they're like, that nobody was going to stop me. Well, Friday comes. In between that Monday and that Friday, I had so hard worked on this rap. It was 3 pages long, handwritten. I was listening to Kid and Play nonstop to get inspiration. Finally, Friday morning comes. I go into the principal's office. It's just me and a microphone, but thousands of people are on the other side of that. And I throw down the most tricked out rap you have ever heard in your whole life about this dance. Well, it's weird to kind of create that kind of content in a vacuum because you have no response from other people. So I walk out of the principal's office feeling like I nailed it. And then all these people are in the hallway, and they're just going, no. no. And I'm like, no? Thumbs down? Like, this is terrible. Well, I go home, I'm crying. You know, I love my raps. I love my words so much. I'm getting picked on the bus. My entire social life had plummeted from like 0 to negative 100. It was just not awesome, not feeling good about myself. Well, my mom and dad were amazing. And they were like, listen, I got this other idea. Maybe that rap didn't work out so well, but our answering machine needs a new message. And I'm like, oh snap. Salt and Peppa would never turn down an opportunity to make the recording on the Weed Family answering machine. So neither will I. So for the next few days, I go to work. My love of words comes right back. I'm like, these words are going to move people to leave a message. They're going to leave a mark. And so I put together this amazing rap. And sure enough, it connected with people. And people loved it. People would call back and back and back, and they'd just be cackling, laughing. And I got so much like satisfaction from it. Even decades later, my mom would be like, the power went out on our answer machine. Can you fly home and please re-record? You know, I'd like, thank God for voicemail now. But anyway, the rap was really just a transformational thing, because what I learned about that is that people connect with words, but we, as the people who present words, we have to go the extra mile. We have to get creative. We have to infuse our energy into it. Now, I know what you're all thinking, though. You're all like, my voicemail message is really lame, and I need some new content, right? And you're thinking, is there like a Creative Commons license on that, or what? Can I throw down your rap, right? You're like, no. All right, here's what's going to happen. I'm doing that rap for you. Okay, so this side of the room, you're going to be the boom. This side of the room, you guys are going to be the chick. I need a beatbox. Ready? So, boom, chick, ba-boom, boom, chick. Boom, chick, ba-boom, boom, chick. The Weeds can't answer the phone today, so leave your name and number without delay. We'll return your call in short order, so speak your words into the recorder. Some people don't, and they are creeps, so leave your little message at the sound of the beep. Yeah. So yeah, that's what I do. You're all like, mad respect, mad respect. So yeah, she's giving me the, hey. Thank you for supporting. So anyway, the relationship with words really started having more and more of a profound effect on me throughout my life, and especially when disseminated creatively. And when I was in high school and college, the power of words was still really powerful, because my last name's Weed, and I got really involved in student government, and the amazing things you can do with slogans when your last name is Weed is just mind-bending. I've never, ever lost an election, and someday I'm going to run for governor of Colorado, and I'm going to win. And all I'm going to need is a bunch of hippies from Pearl Street to be my campaign managers. It's on. You know? There's so many things that we can do with words. But when I graduated from college, there was a transformation that started to happen. It started to go just from words to story. We started to kind of have an evolution. I was working in public relations, and I worked in PR at a children's hospital, at a zoo, at a PR firm, and then finally started realizing that this wasn't really the authentic story I wanted to tell. This was more of like the polished 3-minute version. So I was like, okay, I want to go on the other side of the camera. So I moved to New York City when I was 22, and started working as a documentary producer, and worked at History Channel, MSNBC, was really telling these authentic, long, detailed stories of people's truths. And I was just totally, totally loving it. I was totally connecting with it. I was only doing this for about a year, however, and the power of words popped up on my radar screen again. On the night of June 12, 2001, I came home from work, and my phone was ringing. I pick it up, and these simple words changed my life forever. Hey, Weed, it's Janelle. She was one of my best friends from college. Shannon McNamara was murdered last night. Those 6 words pretty much changed my entire trajectory. And perhaps you've gotten news before as well, where simple words, simple information changes everything you know to be true, everything that you could feel, everything that you could want. Because in that moment, it was kind of like a matrix moment, where I went from feeling totally safe and secure in the world, totally on fire, living my truth. I'd climbed that top stair, and I was really there. I was really doing it. But everything shifted. And I went home for the wake and the funeral the following day. And I started realizing through all of my friends' stories, sitting around a campfire the night before the wake, I started realizing that the stories that these young women were telling, all of my best friends, my sorority sisters, these amazing, educated, unstoppable women, saying things like, the worst part of my day is when I have to leave my internship and walk to my car on the parking deck because I'm so freaked out someone's going to come after me. Or telling horrible stories about sleeping in their apartment and people breaking in. And it was just story after story after story. And while they were scary and it was building up all this intolerance in me, it also was making me realize that sitting around that campfire, we had never connected the way that we did that night. Because we were vulnerable, we were real, we were talking about the stuff that scared us, that moved us, and we were talking about the stuff that we wanted to change. And I saw the power of a group sharing their stories without holding back and being so real and so honest and so scared and so dedicated to changing that shit, because that's not okay. And it moved me. And so I decided that this was going to become my new work. And I was going to leave the documentary stuff behind, and this was just going to evolve. What I ended up doing was taking a tad to the extreme, which is how I roll also. And I started training with some of the best violence prevention and personal self-defense experts in the entire world. Got certifications with them. It was a crazy time. Actually, 3 months to the day of Shannon's murder was the World Trade Center situation, was 9/11. And I was actually working at the World Trade Center at the time. And so I was commuting there every single day. So my friend had been murdered. 3 months later, my workplace goes away, and obviously a million other layers of national catastrophe was going down. And it was just a really crazy time, but it probably wasn't the best time to start a business, if you think back on it. Financial markets are imploding, and no one wants to start a business. You can't get a loan. Nothing's working out. Everyone's angry. Everyone's scared. Or maybe it was the best time to start a business. And I mention that because I know sometimes, as entrepreneurs, we just want to hold back and wait for that perfect opportunity. Sometimes the worst time is the best time. But anyway, I started getting all these certifications and decided, well, what if we could take this personal safety and self-defense information and we could stop delivering it like the creepy cops do? Like, you ladies shouldn't walk alone at night, you know, and they're pulling up the pants, you know, it's not really connecting. And so I was like, what if I could take like my sorority president thing and really kind of MTV this information up and make it really approachable for the 14 to 22 age group? And so that's exactly what I did. I really put together a 90-minute presentation. It was like a one-woman show, and it was highly comedic, super fun, using cutting-edge violence prevention tips and information. But it was kind of like giving a kid cough syrup but putting cherry flavoring in it first. And so they're getting the good stuff, but they don't taste all the ickiness. And that was a really powerful model. So this one-woman show ended up traveling all over the country. I was on an airplane about 200 days a year for about 8 years straight, just speaking to crowds, usually of about 1,000 or 2, in auditoriums, high schools, colleges mostly. Wrote a book, wrote a column for Cosmo Girl magazine, and was doing constant media interviews, and I was starting to burn out a little bit. This was 2009 by this point. I was also knocked up. And there is no... I'm so eloquent, right? Let me tell you something. It was like the worst nightmare for college girls to see a pregnant woman on stage and have to look at her for 90 minutes because they're just like, I don't want to acknowledge that could happen, you know? So I was like, all right, I got to remove myself from this situation. And so it was a perfect time to scale. So this is really important, what I'm about to tell you. There's a big difference between our story and our truth. Now, in the Girls Fight Back program, it was about Shannon. It was about her story of being murdered. It was about me, of Shannon being murdered and my response to that, wanting to start a movement to really memorialize her, but it was also about a truth. The truth was so much bigger than our story, because the reality is that Girls Fight Back was so much bigger than Shannon. It's so much bigger than me. It's the truth that women deserve to walk down the street or sleep in their homes and not be afraid all the time. It means that we should not have to make decisions stemming from fear. Now that, my friends, is scalable. That is a story that really connects with people. It doesn't need to have us involved. And as a founder, I feel really, really strongly about founders building things based on ideas and truths instead of just our stories, because if it's just our story, if we go away, so does the whole idea. And that's a huge bummer. So anyway, I trained a whole team of people. They did a phenomenal job, was able to kind of extract my personal story from the program and give them the autonomy to insert their story in instead. So we were able to kind of change it out a little bit. It worked really well. And went off, had a baby, then had another one. And just this past summer, I sold that company. And I actually sold it to my booking agent in Los Angeles, who had been largely running all of the business operations anyway. So it was a beautiful, smooth, wonderful transition. Now, if you look back on that, I mean, my story was that I abandoned that whole documentary world in order to start Girls Fight Back because my friend was murdered. That's a powerful story. And I'd love to sit here and tell you that my truth was that I did that because I wanted to end violence against women, or I wanted to just eradicate violence from the planet, or something like really grand and noble. But I gotta tell you guys, authentically, that's not my truth. I realized what my truth is actually just last year when I was starting to do all the soul searching in deciding to sell the company. And I realized that my truth in starting Girls Fight Back was much more simple. It was about Shannon. That's her, by the way, on the right. I'm the one in the stupid hat. It was about her, but it was also about her mom. At her wake, I had waited for hours and hours and hours to get up to the front of the room to pay my respects in the casket, or next to the casket, and I remember just kneeling there, and this is so inappropriate, but I remember the moment of just feeling in my body that I was about to throw up, like in her casket. That's not acceptable, by the way. And in most cultures, I'm sure, it's just not awesome. And I remember telling myself, like, weed, hold it together. Weed, don't even. Like, I've done a lot of stupid stuff in my day, but like, that's just not gonna happen. And I remember, but the whole situation was so wrong and so hard and so sickening on every possible level. And I remember fixating on these tiny details and seeing, I remember seeing black under her nails and knowing that that's where she fought this guy. And which later, by the way, captured and convicted her killer because she fought back and had so much DNA evidence. But I just remember all of these little tiny details. And I remember just thinking, my truth in this is that this is just not okay. It wasn't this huge, powerful truth. It's just not okay. Well, my truth got even more solidified as I moved through the line, or after the casket, I meet her parents for the first time, and I introduce myself. Hello, Cindy and Bob. My name is Erin Weed. Oh, you're Weed? That's what they said to me. I'm like, wow, this is crazy. I guess she's told them some stories about me. This could be questionable. But I was like, yeah, I'm Weed. I'm so sorry. And I spewed a bunch of cliche stuff that you say at a funeral. And Cindy specifically and I connected immediately. And she just said, thank you so much for saying that. Hey, Weed, can I just tell you something that I haven't really told somebody else? I was like, sure. And she said, you know, you think that when your only daughter is murdered, that it just can't get worse than that. You think that you've just kind of hit the level of pain in life where it just can't be exceeded. And she's like, you know, that's not true. I was like, really? She's like, yeah. She's like, I am still scared of something. I am still scared of something every morning since she's been gone. I was like, what are you scared of, Cindy? She said, I am so afraid that Shannon is going to be forgotten. And friends, that was my moment. That was my truth. That I didn't start Girls Fight Back to end violence. I didn't start Girls Fight Back to make this a safer place for women. I started Girls Fight Back for a mom. A mom who told me that it's not awful enough to lose your child. It's even more awful to think about the fact that they're forgotten. They could be forgotten. It's like one of those ShamWow commercials. But wait, there's more, you know? It's like, no, it's just, that's not okay. And I really, really hate cliche. And when I coach TED speakers, I break out into hives when they try to drop that stuff on me. But there's one cliche that I will support. And that's that whole cliche that is, if you affect one person, then you've done your job. And that's something that I've seen come to fruition. Because by starting Girls Fight Back for that one woman, we have now reached over 1 million young women live in butts and seats in events across the world, in the United States, India, and Pakistan, with a message that they can become their own best protectors. I wanted to share that with you because there's a story in it, but there's a truth in it. And that we can just affect one person with our businesses, with whatever you're working on. And sometimes that in itself can scale. Sometimes the scalability isn't all about the business or the spreadsheet or the numbers. It's just about the impact that you can make. So it's about the story and it's about the truth. Now, I was able to sell the company because we built the company on the truth. And I would really encourage you, as we work through this stuff today in the storytelling, focus on the truth, because that is the stuff that someday you might want to walk away from. And on that note, you are not your story. If you should build the initiative that you're working on right now, and let's say it goes phenomenally well, you nail it, you've got the next Google, you cash out, you're just on top, well, guess what? That's not who you are. Congratulations, you've done a great job, but that's not who you are. Or on the flip side, if whatever you're working on, you launch it, it crashes and it burns, and you file bankruptcy and you feel bad about yourself and you lay in bed and you cry. Well, guess what? That's not who you are either. We are not our stories. And in this culture, we get so wrapped up in what we've been through, and we slap all these labels on ourselves and other people about who we are, and I don't think it's true. I think what's true is our truth. And what I want to do with you all today is to go deeper than the story. Stories are important. Let's go deeper. Let's find out what the stories mean to us, and then let's go the distance, and let's find out what it can mean for other people too. So I don't know if you all saw this particular TED Talk. Ash Beckham, she gave a TED Talk called Coming Out of Your Closet. And her whole deal, by the way, she's one of my clients, and we worked on this TED Talk together. Her TED Talk came out of a service that we offer at Evoso called a dig, which is basically a deep dive into your soul, and you'll probably cry. But we get your entire life story, and then we start to pull out your truths of all the things that are most important to you, the things that are over your personal life, over your business life, and we find out it's big. It's like, why are you here? What do you have to say? Why should people listen to you? It's a really profound experience. So I did that with Ash Beckham, and she's a lesbian woman. She had given a talk at Ignite Boulder about 6 months prior to that, and she did really well. And it was a talk about why you shouldn't say the phrase, "that's so gay." And it was really light, it was really fun, it got picked up by Upworthy, it was a successful talk. But she came to me, and she was like, hey, I just want to blow that Ignite talk out of the water. I just want to totally just rock this, own this, whatever. And I was like, that's cool and everything, but I'm probably not your girl. Because I could give a frog's fat ass about YouTube views. I care about your truth. I care about what's real and how we can leave this audience better than we found them. If you're into that, let's create that talk. And she's like, I am so into that. That sounds so much more authentic. So we got to work, we did her dig. And with her particular speech, I'm not going to show you the whole speech, it's kind of long. I don't want to cut into your time. But with her speech, she talked about her experience coming out of the closet. And coming out of the closet as a gay person and how difficult that was. So her story was that she was gay, and that was hard to keep that a secret. But her truth was that she was so uncomfortable in her own skin keeping that truth, or keeping that secret, that she just couldn't live with herself. But there was a universal truth in that, and that's that everyone has a closet, and all a closet is a hard conversation. So that particular talk absolutely knocked it out of the park. Again, got picked up by Upworthy. It also got picked up by TED.com, and today it has close to 5 million views on YouTube. Now, you might think, well, is Ash some big, powerful person? Is she some big PFLAG advocate or whatever? Ash just so happens to own a company that produces softball tournaments in the Midwest. Ash was not building some big, huge company. She was not building some big personal brand. In fact, my company, Evoso, has built her entire brand as an afterthought just to keep up with all the requests for her to speak, because people don't care so much anymore about the brand. People want the truth. They want to connect with the authentic individual. And Ash was willing to show up that way. So if you haven't seen it, Google Ash Beckham TEDx Boulder, and then you can check it out. Now, what we had to do, though, before we really broke into this stuff, was we had to get real about who are we to say what we need to say. Now, this coconut actually represents something that we do now in our digs, And there's an ancient Hindu ritual called breaking a coconut. And basically what this is it's the way that they annihilate the ego. And I don't say ego necessarily in a way where the person thinks they're awesome and all self-aggrandizing, but it's more like in a way where we get in our own way when we are communicating. We get in our own way because we're telling ourselves that sounds stupid, or who am I, or I'm too young, or I don't have enough success. We're filtering ourselves. Now, I happen to believe that each and every one of us, we are spirits living in bodies, and we are all getting messages that just want to come through us. Now, if we will get out of our own damn way and just let the messages pass through, goodness happens. And I've seen this happen time and time again. So one of the things that I always tell my clients is, you got to break a coconut for the thing that's holding you back. Whether you're thinking, I'm not going to make enough money, or I don't have the permission that I need to go out and do this, what you do is you smash a coconut. Like sometimes my clients are like done with our dig, and our office is right over there at the hub. And they're always like afraid of getting arrested by the cops, like breaking a coconut, right here on the river. But you smash a coconut, and then you send the remnants down the river. You don't eat it, because the coconut represents the thing that's holding you back. So you don't want to eat that, So you send it down the river, and really what that does is it lets it go. It lets it pass through you. So when people always ask me, what's your number one tip for doing these great TED Talks and telling these great stories, it's breaking a coconut. Get out of your own way. Know that each and every one of you has something so important and so special to say. It's just a matter of allowing it to pass through us. Now, this is another philosophy that we have in Evoso, which is, this is the UPS guy, that when we give speeches especially, we really want to be just delivering the gift, delivering the package. I made reference to this earlier on, but I believe this so much. Just like my Unabomber son gave me a gift this morning. It's our jobs every time we interface with someone, whether you're giving a presentation, or whether you ran into someone on an elevator, or whether you're meeting someone at a networking event, or you're writing the copy for your About page, I believe that it is our responsibility as leaders to leave our audiences better than we found them. Now, if you will take the time today, or any day, to really think about, what does my audience need to hear? What does my audience need emotionally? What does my audience need to feel on the other side of interacting with me? You're probably going to connect with them. When you connect with people, those people turn into fans, they turn into friends, they turn into customers, they turn into funders. They turn into people who believe in you and want to hear more from you. But your job is really just to be the UPS guy. And one of the things I do a lot with my clients, especially our more global TED type of clients, they are freaking out when they have to go on the stage and give their speech. And the speeches that I write with people are pretty raw and pretty authentic, and they're saying some crazy stuff sometimes that they're really scared to say. So one of the things I help a lot with is anxiety management. And one of the things that really helps a lot when you get on a stage of any kind is just simply to be like, hey, this isn't me. This is like some spirit coming through me. I'm just the UPS guy. That's cool. I can do that job. All of a sudden, all of the pressure is taken off. You feel so much more confident. You're just there to do your job. Now, this isn't to say that you don't do an excellent, outstanding, creative job. I'm all about that. But it kind of takes the pressure off when it comes time to delivery, to really just show up and give the gift, give a smile, walk away, have a nice day, and then you can go on with your life. This also matters for both positive and negative, because sometimes, man, I've spoken to huge crowds and just absolutely nailed it on some cases, and people, it's just like, I feel like you're Britney Spears for a moment. And you can't thrive in that energy. You can't say, oh, because all those people loved me, I'm lovable. That doesn't work. And on the flip side, when I've crashed and burned on national live television, that sucks, but that's not me either. And I can't live in that energy. We just have to let it pass through us. So this might sound kind of like woo-woo spiritual, and hey, welcome to Boulder. This is how we roll here. But it's true. And this is the way that marketing and communications are going. Even though people want to fight me on this, because they really have these great business models built in the current paradigm, it is shifting, my friends. It is shifting. It is shifting towards truth and trust. That is the new marketing and communications, and we just have to really get brave about what we're putting out there today. And so this workshop, I'm hoping, is going to really bring out your truth. I hope that you're willing to show up and really tell some of your stories, because soon I want to incorporate you all in this too. But before we do that, if there's sound on here, I'd love to show you. Wait, hold on. Wait. Oh, wait. Sometimes when clients walk through my door, the kinds of people that Evoso works with, we don't really work with the National Speakers Association kind of people that are like, hey, how about that weather, Boulder? You know, it's just like, yeah, those people freak me out really bad. So what we work with is people that are actually doing stuff, that are changing the world, that are studying science and crunching numbers and figuring out problems. Guess what? Some of these people are not always the most savvy people socially. Some of these people are not always the most savvy people in any setting whatsoever, but goddamn, they're smart, you know? And I love these people. I love them so much because they are doing the thing, and they're willing to stand up and speak their truth about it. But a lot of times they have a lot of anxiety about, how is this going to come out? How am I going to sound? How am I going to look? Am I going to be awkward? Well, I want to show you a 5-minute Ignite talk. And this is one of our clients named Banks. He actually works at the Unreasonable Institute, for anybody who's familiar with Unreasonable. He's also a really good friend of mine now. We kind of bonded over this speech. But I wanted to show you guys an example about owning your truth. Telling a story, but building on it so that there's a truth. I wanted to use this as an example so I could really talk you through this formula. Because you're probably getting annoyed at me at this point, like the amount of times that I've said the word story and truth, but it's so important. And this is what we're going to do in our activity together after this. So what I want you to watch for with Banks is watch for vulnerability. Watch for his stories, but watch for when he makes the connection from the story to the truth in his life, and then watch him when he goes the extra mile and he makes a connection from the story, his personal truth, and then to the universal truth that applies to all people. And that's why his Ignite talk is one of the top Boulder Ignite talks of all time. All right, so give it a watch and we'll talk about it.
My name is Banks. I am awkward. I have anxiety about being awkward. So I'm here to talk to you about why we should embrace awkwardness. My awkwardness started in high school. I had relentless acne. I had too many turtleneck sweaters in my closet, and I could not take a hint from girls. Some of whom are in this room right now. I was awkward. But where does awkwardness come from? The etymology of awkwardness is in the wrong direction, or the wrong way. And that begs the question, what is the right direction? The direction of political correctness? The direction of social norms? The truth is, we are afraid of awkwardness. 3 times as many people avoid awkwardness as those who want to embrace awkwardness. There is an unwritten rule in every male bathroom that this will never happen. And if it does happen, that is awkward, that is uncomfortable. That challenges what we see to be acceptable. Michael Scott is awkward. He's awkward because he wears his insecurities, his insensitivities on his sleeve. He doesn't have a filter, and that makes him awkward. I work out of a co-working space here in Boulder. Sometimes I go do serious work in the bathroom, if you know what I mean, only to walk out and find a cute girl about to walk in. That is awkward, that is uncomfortable. Boners are awkward. Here, Ron Burgundy has a massive erection. Not even the pleats in his pants can conceal the awkwardness. About 10 years ago, I had a wet dream on a plane next to my mom. Mom, I know you're in the audience tonight, and unfortunately you didn't know that until now, but now I'm telling you, this is awkward. And it'll be more awkward afterwards. But what about this is awkwardness that we should avoid. What about the awkwardness that we should embrace? What about the awkwardness on the dance floor? The awkwardness of love, the awkwardness that is so fundamentally human. We need a new definition. Awkwardness is when you show your true self, but you don't mean to. And how can we go through our lives and not show our true selves? How can we not be awkward? Awkwardness shows us that we are works in progress. It shows that we don't have everything figured out. It shows us that we're not alone, because everyone here at some point has felt awkward, and that must mean you are human. Yeah. Awkwardness is a shortcut to vulnerability. When you decrease the stigma of awkwardness, you increase the potential for connection. But when you try to avoid awkwardness, you forfeit the opportunity to connect. Awkwardness is human. So when you go to a party and you run out of small talk and it's awkward, keep going. When you forget someone's name who you should know and it's awkward, keep going. When you're in middle school and it's awkward, keep going. When you reply all accidentally to an email and it's awkward, keep going. When your iPhone autocorrects and it's awkward, keep going. When your kids turn out differently than you do and it's awkward, keep going. When you fart in a crowded elevator and it's awkward, keep going. When you want to kiss her and it's awkward, keep going. When you want to tell her for the very first time, I love you, and it's awkward, keep going. Dr. Seuss says we're all a little weird, and life is weird, and when we find someone whose weirdness is compatible with ours, we join up with them and fall into mutual weirdness and call it love. What are you missing out on by not embracing awkwardness? On the other side of awkwardness is connection. On the other side of awkwardness is awesome. Go. Be awkward tonight. Embrace it. Thank you.
So Banks is basically the man. But it was interesting, the first time we sat down to start plotting out his talk, he was just like, I want to talk about awkwardness, but he wanted to make a really compelling argument why people should like it. And I was like, listen, dude, we're going to have some serious fun with this if this is going to go anywhere, because the way that we're going to connect is that we're going to really speak to people's souls, and everyone's had some of those awkward situations. And that is how we're going to connect. So then my next question at Banks was, are you ready to get vulnerable? What's some of the most awkward stuff that's happened to you? This is officially the best speaker coaching session of my entire life, was making a list of all of Banks's most awkward moments. It was the most enjoyable, recreational work day I've ever had, listing these out. This guy is epic, the stuff that he has done. And then the hard part was choosing his best hits of awkwardness, but we finally got a few of them. And if you remember some of the stories from in here, they're vulnerable, they are awkward, they make you cringe a little. Like, what? Having a wet dream on a plane next to your mom? What? She didn't know until now? What? We created an awkward moment in his speech. And it was beautiful. And that is how we connect, when we not just tell people our stories, but we make them feel our stories, because every person in that room that night loved Banks. He could do no wrong that night. I was out at the bar with him afterwards, and that guy got more free beer than I have ever seen in my whole life. He's like, I'm not even used to people talking to me at bars, But it's because he was so lovable, people felt so connected to him. And that's really what we strive for. No matter what your topic is, we can find that connection by finding the story, but finding the truth. In his case, let's take the wet dream thing, okay? So that's the story. But his truth in that was, this is embarrassing. But his universal truth, if he's to take it to the next level, is that it connects people when we're awkward and we go through it anyway. And his big message was, keep going, keep going, keep going. And what he did is he left people with a piece of advice that's simple, that's easy, that's stuff that he's actually practiced. And people were able to really keep going through their most awkward moments. You'll notice, though, that a speech like this is really kind of simple. We didn't get it all complicated. We didn't need all sorts of scientific facts. We didn't need all sorts of that stuff. You don't need all of this stuff that sometimes we think we need to back up our case. You just have to be you. People like him, people like Ash. A lot of people don't know these people, but they're willing to put themselves out there and they're willing to make that connection. So let me explain to you the process that we use at my company to really build our authentic message. And then I want to take you all through an exercise so you can start practicing this stuff. So we have a system called Dig, Plant, Grow. And a lot of times people come to us and they're like, hey, I got a speech to give in 2 weeks, can you just write my speech? Answer, no, not interested. But what we will do is we will dig you. And I already explained that. It's kind of a deep dive into your stories and your truth. And we actually have our clients tell their entire life story, and we document it in sticky notes on our window. It's really cool to kind of see your whole life unfold and then pull the truths out. So first we start with the dig. I would encourage you that anytime you have to give a talk or tell any kind of story, to do a deep dive on yourself, or even better, have a friend do it on you. And that's what we're going to do in a few minutes, is actually try this out with a partner. But really do the deep dive on the story and really figure out what the truth is in it. Only then should we plant. So planting is all about actually creating the speech, creating the website, relaunching the brand. Do not create something until you're super clear on your authentic message. So many times people come to us and they just want to relaunch their brand because they don't like their logo anymore. Well, you're not going to like it again in another year, because really what you're telling me is that you just don't know who you are, and you're building this whole business and this whole brand on something you're not certain about. Well, let's just all save ourselves a lot of time and money and just do it right the first time, eh? You know? Am I Canadian? What just happened? Anyway. That was an out-of-body experience. Finally, we grow. This is another thing that we get into our office a lot. We work with a lot of public figures, a lot of celebrities, a lot of leaders of organizations. And sometimes people come to us and they're like, hey, we just want to get more bookings. Or, hey, I have a book coming out and I just want you to plan my book tour. Or just, hey, I want you to get me on the Today Show. I mean, they have all sorts of really lofty, awesome things. But again, my answer is, sorry, not till I dig you. Because until we know who we really are, and then we craft something that's really great in the plant phase to actually put out to the world, we should not be marketing it. We should not be putting it out there. And I'm not saying that we don't do anything in tandem. I mean, sometimes as startup social entrepreneurs, we have to be scrappy. I am a professional scrappy person. This is my second startup. It works. But there's got to be a natural flow when it comes to knowing who you really are, the business you're really trying to build, and how to get it out there. So growing should be at the very, very end. I can just, I kind of talked through this already, but the fun thing about our digs, and if we have time we can play with this today, is that all of our clients, they get one word, one life word that is over their entire existence. And this is some of our clients. So words like resolve, courage, interstices. Wonder who that was. Gail. You'll have to ask her what it means. I'm not smart enough. I was like, I went to Eastern Illinois University. You're going to have to come up with a new word or something, because I don't get that. But it actually means the space between, which it was really beautiful, and it was so perfect for her. But these clients come up with their word that really is the energy in which they're trying to put stuff out to the world. Ash Beckham's was freedom. And we never talked about freedom in her speech, but on the other side of having a hard conversation, on the other side of coming out of your closet, whether it's you have to tell someone you have a brain tumor or you have to come out as gay, there's freedom in that. And then we have a better life. And that's what drives her. If you can come up with the one word that's over your life and the one word that's over your business, it's a really good lighthouse in the night when we kind of get a little off course to bring us back to where the energy is. My word is authentic. And let me tell you something, that word is a pisser. Because what it means is that anything in my life that's not authentic just doesn't work anymore. It melts away, and that can be really hard, because a lot of us build somewhat inauthentic lives. Not to mean that we're all a bunch of liars walking around, but we are just kind of subscribing to other people's ideas of what success looks like. I'm currently going through a divorce because I had to really come into my truth that I was in an inauthentic relationship. And that's hard. But once we get to our word, everything starts kind of working out, but it jacks up your life a little bit at first, so warning. But anyway, we really get to people's story, to their truth. We get to their one life word. They write a manifesto about it. Now, out of this comes their message, and that's usually about 7 bulleted points of what you're trying to say to the world. 7 words or less. Let's keep it simple. Sometimes in marketing and storytelling and communications in general, we're just overcomplicating everything. You know that you're probably complicating or overwording something if you use the word innovative, by the way. It's like the most overused word on the internet, so like just don't do it. That and inspire. When people say, oh, I think my word's inspire, I'm like, no, it's not. I hate that word. It's the only time I get a little controlling about people's life words. There's nothing wrong with inspiring people, but I mean, like, inspire to do what? Like, it's not clear enough for me. So, and then really finding out who is your audience. A lot of times we build our businesses and we're not exactly sure who is going to buy or engage or do whatever we want them to do. We don't even know who they are. So we should only get clear on our audience, though, after we're already really in tune with who we are and what we need to say. Typical marketing and PR, having come from that world, they usually don't care. They'll take anything and they'll just package it so that it will connect with a certain audience. Guess what? That's not authentic, though. And it's not sustainable for the long term. Know who you are, know what you want to build, then figure out the audience that's going to buy that. It's going to be so much more rewarding for you as an entrepreneur. Next, we plant, and really we have a 4-step series called Discover, Develop, Design, and Deliver. This usually applies mostly to the speeches that we work with people on. And so the discovery period is all about, okay, we've already done the dig at this point, so I know their whole energy, I know their word, I know the tone in which they want to deliver this stuff, but let's do some discovery on the topic you want to talk about. So with Bank's topic, we had to do an hour of what is your most awkward content. It was amazing. But really getting all that out and getting it out on a whiteboard, on sticky notes, whatever floats your boat, but get it out of your head. Next is develop. Only after we really discover what we want to talk about should we start crafting it together. And that could be just a storyboard, putting it into an outline, whatever flow works for you, but starting to put it together only after you have all the pieces on the table. Then you design it. I'm a real big design snob. Making things look pretty and making visuals that connect with people is incredibly important. In Banks' speech, would his speech have been as impactful if he didn't have a picture of Ron Burgundy with a massive boner? Like, probably not, because that really illustrated the point of what he was talking about. He didn't leave it to people's imagination. People's brains can sometimes be lazy, especially at an event like a TED event or an Ignite event. And then finally, deliver. It does matter how we present information to people. However, I will tell you that of everything that I do in my job, actually doing speaker coaching, as far as like how you move and talk on stage, it's like 1% of the time, because once you're living your truth, once you know who you are, you know what you need to say, you've done your homework, it looks good, it sounds good, you can't wait to give that presentation. You don't need someone up there coaching you on how to not look like a tool. It just flows. That's the power of authenticity, though. When we don't have to pretend, things get a lot easier, don't they? Finally, we have grow, and that's really just like the business and marketing of getting your message out to the world. And again, I would just re-emphasize, let's not put our stuff out there until we're really clear on what we're trying to build. All right, so now I'd like to turn to you guys and do an exercise. So you've been hearing me talk a lot about this story, personal truth, universal truth. The great news about this system, and P.S., all of our best speeches, our most viral speeches, have all been built on this platform. And really what we do in the discover phase of the plant is we go through, hey, what is your best content? And content can be a story, content can be a statistic, content could be an anecdote, it can be anything. It can be your story, somebody else's story. It can be anything but content. So it all has to start with that. But then taking it to the next level and saying, well, what did this mean to me? What did this mean to me in my life? What did I get out of it? How am I better, changed, different, more powerful as a result of going through that or knowing this piece of information? And then the universal truth is, what can other people get from this? How can other people connect to my story in a way that makes them better? Now, you'll start to notice probably after seeing this formula that most speakers do not speak this way. I don't know where this system came from. I just kind of made it up. It just passed through me. I got out of the way. I broke a coconut about it. It's great. But most speakers don't do this. You'll see a lot of speakers of, I have an epic health challenge and I climbed Everest. And then they get up there and they tell their story about how sick they were, but they climbed Everest. Awesome. And no one's connected to you because they're in awe by you. Maybe they're feeling really guilty about not going to the gym last night because of you, but they're not feeling like, hey, I want to do something. I want to change something. I want to get involved. I want to shift things. And personally, this is kind of a personal flaw I'm working on, but I mean, I get irate when I see otherwise really good presenters or good people get up there and only tell their story, because to me, frankly, it feels a little selfish. It feels very kind of like, am I your therapist? Did you just tell me your whole story and like, did you not pay me for it? You know? That's not what your audience is there for. You're there to give them a gift. You're the UPS guy. Deliver the package, man. So that's really what we want to do, is find that personal truth and that universal truth. The cool thing about this flow, though, is that it doesn't just apply to speeches. This applies to how we authentically connect with people in general. This applies to conversations. Do you have any friends that you go out and grab a drink with them and they just talk about themselves the entire time and it's never a meaningful conversation, and the whole time you're thinking, this is a waste of my time. I don't even like hanging out with this person anymore. There's no meaning. But then you have these other friends where you're like, I don't know what we just talked about, but like mind blown. And usually what those kind of conversations are is you're talking about the universal truths. You're engaged in a conversation where both of you are finding the relevancy in it. And that's when we connect. The universal truth about people in general is we all want connection. We want connection to self. We want connection to others. We want connection to nature. And I believe that one of the biggest problems when it comes to just people feeling perpetually unhappy is because they feel perpetually disconnected. If you as a communicator, a storyteller, a speaker, a leader are able to learn how to take your stories and connect with people and connect them to themselves so that there's connection happening even after you've left the room and they never see you again, you have left this world much better than you found it. So you want to practice it? Okay. So what I'd love for everybody to do is to partner up with somebody. It can be anybody. It can be someone who's on your team, not on your team. But just find a partner. And what we're going to do is, if you could just is it okay if we turn chairs? Am I going to mess up your real estate here? All right. So turn your chairs towards each other, and I'm going to talk you through this. So everybody's in pairs, correct? Okay. One group of 3. We can do that. We'll work with you. Okay. So here's what we're going to do. Now let's set an intention at the very beginning here that what we're really learning to do, forget the storytelling stuff for a moment. What we're looking to do is to authentically connect with the person sitting in front of you. Not on a surface level, not on a, hey, we probably have something in common because we're all at starting block sort of level, but like, I want to hear you, I want to know you. Part of this process has to be really good listening, really dialed in. Now I know you all probably have a lot on your minds right now. And our culture, we're all just a bunch of people walking around that are totally overstimulated, overbooked, overplanned, overstressed out. But what I'm asking you all to do is just take a few moments to clear that out and to be present. Because that's step 1 in authentically communicating with people, with audiences, with creating entire marketing platforms. We must be present with who we're communicating with, okay? Secondly, let's shift our intention so that this isn't about them so much. I'm going to just close this a little bit. Let's just shift our intention that when your partner is talking, that time is all about them. Really give them that star seat. They're telling you their story. And really be present with them, listen, give them that time, and just even give them that love of just, I'm hearing you. This just doesn't happen, does it? Like, short of having some really stellar quality friendships, this doesn't happen in our culture. And I will tell you, if you take one thing out of starting block, I'm sure you're going to take 10 trillion things out of starting block, but if you just start listening to people in the world and hearing what they have to say, your questions are all going to get answered. Because as people, there's a universal experience in what moves us and what excites us, what makes us want to buy, what makes us want to change things. It's universal. It's not so mysterious. As someone who listens and digs people for a living, I see, even though they all come up with different words, we've never had a repeat word, which kind of blows my mind. I guess when you have words like interstices, you have plenty to pick from, but it is interesting to me how there is a universal experience in what we all want as human beings. Okay, we want connection. So, the person, why don't you guys decide right now who is going to listen and who is going to talk. So listeners, raise your hand if you're listening. Okay, listeners, hands up. Okay. All right, listeners. So your job is to ask your partner this question. What is your most embarrassing moment? Now, your job isn't done yet, listeners. Does everyone have pen and paper? Okay. I'd love for you to take notes, to actively listen, but to be taking notes. So the person who's talking, I don't want anything in your hands. Talking people, empty. Because all you're doing is talking. This is all about you. So you're going to ask them what's their most embarrassing moment, but you're also going to kind of interview them a little bit. And what I'm teaching you guys to do right now is actually kind of a mini dig. Normally I take 2 days with my clients to do this, but you guys are doing a very, very short version. But just really kind of digging a little bit and maybe asking the questions that you wouldn't normally have total credence to ask in, say, a typical social setting. I'm a big fan of getting authentic, even if it makes us uncomfortable sometimes. Okay? So really asking those questions. If the person gets a little stuck or they can't remember a detail, just ask them a helpful question and take some notes. Now, the person who's talking, here's your job. To be vulnerable. To be authentic. If you're thinking about 2 stories in your head and you're trying to decide which one you want to say out loud, say the one you don't want to say out loud. When people usually come to me and they're like, I totally want to give a TED Talk. Okay, what do you want to give a TED Talk about? Oh, about this. Okay, well, what are the stories you want to share in this? Well, this is one I don't want to share. That's the one we're sharing, buddy. You know, I am all over that, and they can't take it back, and they don't even realize it. And those are the talks that engage, because those are the ones you're scared to say. If you're scared to say something, it probably means that that is going to connect with someone, and that's scary. I dare you to say it. It'll be fun. Now, because of that, let's also just agree that this is confidential. It's just a nice thing to do, to not put this on Facebook. That's not a nice thing to do. So we have a safe space. We have authentic talkers. We have dialed in listeners. And we're going to give you about, let me see how we're doing on time here. We're going to give you about 5 minutes. So you have 5 minutes to get to this person's most embarrassing story. Now, listeners, this is very important. The talker's job is just basically to talk. Listeners, this is your job. This is your map. First, you want to get their story, and you want to somehow ask questions about their truth. Sample questions would be like, what did you learn from that time that you were at that bat mitzvah and you bit it on the dance floor in front of the boy you liked? How are you better for that? Or what did you learn? So really just get to the learning, or how were you different after that happened? So really ask those kinds of questions. Does that make sense? And then you want to ask the kinds of questions that get to the universal truth. Well, how could that help other people? Or how do you feel like other people would benefit from having heard that story? Or do you think other people have ever been in an embarrassing situation on a bat mitzvah dance floor? What do you think they might have gotten out of it? Or what do people overall, how do we benefit from embarrassment? Do you see where I'm going with this? This is a whole new level of conversation and connection and storytelling. It's really cool. Okay? So everybody be brave. Ready? Take a deep breath. And you have 5 minutes to get to the core of this. Go. And we're going to switch. So, the next person has a different question. So all you talkers are all thinking, or all the listeners were all thinking about their embarrassing moment the entire time, but that's not what your question is. So, now we're going to switch. Before we switch, though, one thing I forgot to tell you guys to do. was really to assign one word. And frankly, I'd love for you guys to kind of agree on it. Like, what is the one word of the universal truth that you feel that person's story exhibits? Talk about that real quick. If you had one word, you can both choose it together. So when you get to that one word, write that down really big at the bottom of their story.
To share their embarrassing story, but let the listener explain it. So you don't have to say your own embarrassing story, you just have to give permission for it to be said about you. Is anybody willing to do that? Yeah! Okay, so whose story is it? It's his story. Okay, so your name is what?
Sean.
Sean, okay, stand up. Okay. So, first of all, what's your name?
Jordan.
Jordan, thank you so much for letting us hear your story.
Sure.
I hope it's good. All right. So, what I would love for you to do is basically tell his story, but in this flow. So, really quickly, like a minute or less.
We totally got that.
What happened?
Just to preface, like we didn't really get to the personal and universal truth.
I can wait.
But it's actually fascinating to hear him wing it.
Okay. And you know, the beautiful thing about that is that you guys can adopt this flow into your daily life, but you wing it all the time. You know, oh wow, that's a really interesting story. I can ask them a question to maybe get to a personal truth and then a universal truth. So this has now become my unconscious mind, and it's just a really cool way to connect. So this is great. So why don't you tell this story, and let's try to keep this like a minute or two. So.
Okay. I'm not a talker. So,
You're good.
Jordan was in the Marine Corps, and it's kind of like a hyper male environment, and a lot of competition. And when you you kind of try to reach this high echelon to be selected for this infantry training.
Yep.
And it's really hard to get into that program. You got in, but to be fully accredited to the program, you actually have to go through this high test of endurance where you're in full gear, and it's like a 15-mile course, and you're by yourself. And you just go to somebody and they give you the next point marker. So it's obstacle course, like Tough Mudder on steroids type thing. And unfortunately, Jordan, throughout the course, you can train for this. This is his, to preface this is his dream. Like, we all have a dream. We all have something that really means to us, like, this is our moment. This was his moment. And he was like, I am so ready for this. And unfortunately, when he took the course, he got lost, which 15-mile trek course out in the wilderness, it's really easy to do that. And he started panicking, he started getting nervous, losing his focus, and then he got heat stroke, it sounds like, and he collapsed from exhaustion, woke up in the hospital. His brothers in arms, and then these are like, band of brothers type deal, are there with him, they're like crying with him through this. And they actually let him, they never do this really, they let him take the course all over again. And the second time he passed. Which is a really awesome thing, but one thing that always really nagged him, even though it's an awesome truth that happened for him, is, all his brothers passed the first time, is he really accepted into this level? Did he really do the best he could, to move on to that? And that's something that he spent a lot of time, am I over time? Like, that's really the crux of the matter then. That's like his truth was being able to say, am I good enough? Did I do this even though I did it the second time around? And my universal truth of that is I have a very relatable story because I was still in the Marines. But basically that we all have a dream, we all have something, and whether you achieve it or not, or you achieve it as Jordan did in a way that may not be how you thought it, did you still get there? Even if you had to walk away, like you mentioned a couple times, did you still get there? I feel like you got there.
Yeah, you got that.
At first I was like, what's the embarrassing part? He's doing pretty good if that's his most embarrassing moment. But that was a great story. Thank you so much for sharing that. Does anybody have another one? Yeah, go for it.
She was on a cruise ship. Oh, Mike, nice. All right, so she was on a cruise ship with her mom when she was 7th grade, so like 11 years old, and they're playing bingo. And she thought she had bingo, so she screams it out. And the room looks around like, oh my God, this little kid got bingo. And she reads her thing and realizes she doesn't have bingo. So this is her personal truth in the sense is like she admitted she often doesn't think before she speaks. It's because she's had older brothers and she's from a family where they're very witty and they speak very freely all the time. So she's always felt the need to defend herself or speak up. She doesn't feel embarrassed to speak up and say what she wants to say. But her universal truth, which is as I spoke to her, it came to me is that she's authentic. She doesn't change from person to person. Who Blake is all the time. And which is really admirable for me because I have different groups of friends and I'm a little bit different in each group. So for me, meeting someone who's just authentic all the time is pretty awesome. Yeah.
Very good. I love that. Yeah. You want to try? Sure. Go for it.
So, Daniel here. His most embarrassing story was he was going to give a speech back at his old university in his old department. And he didn't prep. He said he always tends to wing things, but he's feeling like really, really agitated about it. And he gets there. He's like, oh, is there a whiteboard where I can start writing down my ideas to get ready? They're like, no, there's no whiteboard, sorry. And he's like, so how many people are going to be here? Like, 10, 15? No, I think there's going to be like, I don't know, half the department's like 200 people or so. And what's interesting is that he went out there and it was totally fine. So what was so embarrassing, right? Like, what was so embarrassing about this? The whole time that he was doing it, he was going in and he was like, I didn't prep. This is too many people. I can't do this. These are all these younger students. I'm 10 years older. I should have something to give them, and I have nothing. He stood up there feeling like there was something that he should have been able to give them that he didn't because he's empty and he was no better than they were. And that what he really wanted was for them to take something beautiful away from him and like love him and be like, I've changed so much in 10 years. Look at how great I am now. And you're all going to see that and, be inspired by my awesomeness. And that wasn't, and what's fascinating to me about it is that the embarrassing thing was not around some kind of tangible failure. It was this failure to be what sounds like the kind of man that Daniel wants to be. It was not someone who is giving a gift. It's not someone who prepares to disseminate beauty out into the world. It's someone who's scared, who wants attention, who wants to feed their ego with the admiration of others. And that gap between who he wants to be and who he was at the time, to me, is fucking beautiful. Yeah. Because that is the room to grow. That's like the inch of space above a plant that it can grow into. That is the vacuum. That's the distance that he can close and love. And man, I love you for that. That is fucking awesome.
Speech! So what's the one word that you would sum up that whole experience? Imposter. Ooh. Okay, I love summing things up with one word because sometimes we just need to boil it down and like one word has a lot of energy, doesn't it? So sometimes I walk away from conversations or client meetings and I just think, what is the one word? And then it's so memorable the next time I see them. And it really kind of is the whole energy around the whole situation. Okay, so now we're going to switch. I want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to be the talker and the listener. So this time we have a new question. And the question is, what is the hardest thing you've ever been through? So you have about 5 minutes. Good luck with that. All right, we got a first volunteer. Everybody listen up, please.
Hello, everyone. So I had a great conversation with Emmanuel over here. His story was he works in the White House currently, but in the past he was working on an election cycle in November for. Yeah, so he was working for an election cycle for a statewide company in Missouri for Jason Kander, and so he was a canvasser, and essentially he was on the phones, he was knocking on doors. It's a very difficult job, a lot of challenge in that, and so someone called, and he was. He had to represent Jason Kander, and then the guy, he said, "Oh, I hate that fucking guy, Jason Kander, the guy he was representing," and so he took that as actually. A self-doubt type of situation in which he couldn't accurately represent the candidate and really kind of vie for him and really kind of say, in the best, most effective way that this is why you should vote for this guy. It turns out that actually the individual on the phone called back and he was confused and it was someone else. So in the end, his whole conception of this kind of failure of not being able to represent Jason Kander as a candidate for the election cycle, wasn't even true. And so in the situation, he was just had a lot of self-doubt and a lot of, he was doubting his whole kind of political career and ability. So, and so his word, he said, from that was progress. And so, the idea of not doubting yourself and all of the things that you think that you are when you fail in some way, not having that kind of fall to the ground, but still kind of keeping your idea of yourself intact. And then what else am I missing? So I think that's a really awesome story. We all know a lot about self-doubt and we all can experience that. So for me, that definitely resonated a lot.
Nice job. And I'm just curious, Emmanuel, have you ever thought of that story in that way before?
It took some time to really think about it, to reflect upon it.
Yeah, because sometimes what happens in our life is that these stories happen, and then they just kind of end, and then we just move on, and maybe sometimes we just feel crappy about it, or we feel great about it, but we never really process it. And so the cool thing about this whole flow is that you can actually do this within yourself, within your own head, and just find more meaning in your own existence by simply taking the time to look at it that way. It's kind of fun. And I love your word progress, too. Because now Emmanuel can look back on that story and be like, feel the progress that he went through as a result of going through that experience. Anybody else want to volunteer?
So, Shilpa shared a really amazing story with me. So 4 years ago, her older sister was getting married. And it was a destination wedding in Italy, in Tuscany. And it was a beautiful, old castle. And amazing, and there was vineyards, and they were going wine tasting, and it was just serene. And so it was the night of the wedding. The first day they kind of had a rehearsal dinner. The second day they had the day off to go wine tasting and explore Tuscany. And the third day was the wedding, and they were wearing all these traditional, beautiful, exquisite Indian garments. And then this beautiful scene, and then the next minute, her father's on the floor. And they're all, mixed emotions. Her sister's screaming, like, "What the fuck is wrong with you, Dad? Like, oh my God." And there's luckily 3 doctors. They're saying, get an ambulance. They're doing CPR, resuscitations. And, then they're waiting 45 minutes. The hospital's is 45 minutes away, so it's a long trip. They're in a small town, and there's doctors, but they're not telling them that he's passed. And they later find out that he died on the spot. And this connects to me in 2 ways. I mean, it's a very sad story, but I'm also becoming an EMT, and you just learn how people can go into cardiac arrest and they can just die the next minute, even if you've resuscitated them and you've given them an airway. And the word we chose was metamorphosis, because one day or 1 minute you can be happy, and the next minute you can be dead. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for sharing your story. Was that an interesting experience to hear someone else telling your hardest moment? Tell me
I actually asked him if he'd want to share it because I think I wanted to hear someone else speak about it. I don't know if that made sense. So, Um, I felt like it was in my story when I don't know. So when I said I was already crying when I talked to him about it, and I shared it with Jordan the other day, yesterday as well, in a different format. But just to clarify one point, it actually happened on the first night, which is the rehearsal dinner, and the next day was in the morgue and all of that stuff. And then my sister didn't want to get married anymore because she's like, how can I? My mom said, no matter what, we came here for this. We're walking down that aisle and you're getting married and nobody's going to cry and it's going to be beautiful. And it was incredibly beautiful. My father was there, of course, but just so it didn't actually happen on the wedding, but happened during the wedding. No, I didn't clarify that when I was telling the story. So just.
Thank you so much, and I love the word metamorphosis too. And like when I hear metamorphosis, I think of like new life and just going through transition. And there were so many symbols of that with your sister getting married and your father passing, and it's so incredible. You know, one of the things that I've learned a lot in just doing the work that we do at Evoso is that people actually want to tell their stories, even their hard ones. And one of the things in our culture is that you just don't ask hard questions. You don't want to upset people. You don't want to freak people out. And the reality is that people can always say no. But don't be afraid to do the deep dive. And don't be afraid to do the deep dive on yourself, of what your own stories are, what your own pains are, your own challenges are. Because that is an opportunity to connect. Now, I know that my soul sister Gail is going to be building on some of the stuff that we've done here this morning in her workshop this afternoon. So I'm really excited to see where this can go for you all, and I hope you have really authentic connections and communications of your stories and your truths. And I just want to say thank you for being here and for being who you are. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.